Welcome to Anderson Hawk Designs, where we love balance boards, one wheels, float wheels, fun wheels. They're all fun. Right here we have the Humble XR. 5 years ago, this thing was the GOAT. But these days, obviously, there's better boards we can get our hands on. But that doesn't mean that we have to put this thing in the closet and let it collect dust forever. We can upgrade it. We can make it better. So, in order to make this board great again, the first thing we're going to have to do is take this thing apart. Alright, we've taken the board apart and we're just going to salvage some of the parts. We're not going to need all of the board. We're going to keep the original bumpers. We're going to keep the rear foot pad, whether it be a wood one or one you bought over the years like this here Cush High. And what makes an XR is it's these rails. This is what makes an XR an XR. Well, that and all the other mini aftermarket rails out there, there's so many different kinds. You don't have to build it using any of this stuff. You can build this thing from scratch. I've already done that with a different board. That would be this guy. So what we're going to do with that old purple board is we're going to turn it into this. Basically a Fungineers type of build with a new controller, a new battery, and a new motor. And that old board will be just as good and just as fast and just as powerful as this one. I've been putting a lot of testing on this board. Got 1,200 miles on it, and it is the most amazing thing ever. Matter of fact, so amazing and so good, obviously I have to upgrade my wife's board now too. So stick around, let me get you guys a good overhead shot of the build and what we're going to do. I'm going to try not to make this video last 10 years. It's never been easier to put together a desked one wheel. Alright, so the first new part we're going to need is a battery module. I got this from the Fungineers. It's well packaged. Costs about $600, so it's $50 to ship it. This is basically an 84 volt battery. It uses 18650 cells. It's 84 volts. It's a 20S 2P P28A moly cell type of battery configuration. My experience, I'm a just under 200 pound rider, and my experience, I'm easily getting 16 miles of consistent range out of this. A little less if I ride my board like I stole it. A little more if I ride it a little more conservatively. But 16 miles has been the good happy spot for me on this particular battery. This module's nice, comes with your LEDs, it's well built. It's got the harness included, and the next thing I also bought for this is a complete Fungineers controller. This thing is awesome, it's my second one. It's got the Thor 300 controller in it. This controller is way more than capable of handling most of your battery configurations at this current generation of board builds. They give you the hardware, and a nice touch, they give you now the mud flaps. You used to have to 3D print these yourselves, but not anymore. And the supervisor has decided to make her rounds to make sure all this stuff is of perfect quality and good. Make sure it's all checked out. Such a good cat. So in their little bag of parts here, they do give you a little Allen key for the little screws for the lid. Just gonna grab that. Mine came with 6 of these screws put on there, so we're gonna zip those off really quick. Okay, so I'm gonna get these 6 screws off. This controller was not bad. This was $600 for a complete controller. It's like the whole box, your Thor 300, all your connections. Everything is here to make this job really easy. This is going to be a solderless build. We're not going to have to solder anything, so that's going to be super awesome. I like to set the lid and the gasket to the side. You're going to have a cable gland that comes on the complete box. Unscrew that, take it off. You're going to set that to the side. You're not going to reuse this. You don't need it. The cable gland already comes on the new harness. There is one thin bolt here you're also going to want to take off. This is good for like the thin metal, sheet metal boxes, but since we're using the bore, we don't need that. We're going to take that off. Then you have 4 cable ends that all need to get pushed inside the box. We're only going to connect 3 of these, but we'll go over that here in a few seconds. The important thing is just get them all in there. Watch me fidget shoving them in here. But once in there, I'm going to take that cable gland that's on the battery module and we're going to screw that nice and snug to the box. There's a rubber O-ring between this cable gland and the box. And that's what's going to seal everything up nice. I like to take a wrench and make it a little bit snugger. Don't over tighten this part. Over tightening this part will just actually damage that O-ring or cause it to split or warp in a weird way, and then you're really defeating the waterproofing of what part's going to do for you. So I'm going to bring you in closer and show you a couple of things. First of all, the new Thors are just improving in quality all the time. They now have a shield over the top. I think this is pretty smart in case a screw lands on it or something, why the battery's connected, because that could actually cause a short, so that's now protected. You're going to have an extra wire here, Halloween colors. This is for something in the future. You're not using it, just don't worry about that one. The other one that's more Christmas colored, that's going to go into the 3rd little notch under this LED bar. You do have to remove that to plug it in. Not a big deal, it's 2 screws. I plug that in first, then I plug in the charge connector, and then the biggest one I plug in last. Get a little bit of spark, don't be scared. I throw a little piece of Kapton tape over this just for insurance. I mean, I don't want this to come apart for any reason. It's all snug, super happy with it. So with all that done, we're going to need to do just a little bit of cable management. At least I like to. I mean, I see some people just throw the lid on and be happy, but me, I got to make it all like as neat as I can make it. Tucking the little wires in here. I mean, you're going to ride this for a lot of miles once you build it. So you don't want these wires hopping around. Let's put a little zip tie and make it match the other side. Kind of forgot this one here. Not a big deal. Let's tuck it around and I'll just add another zip tie. Boom. There it is. That fast. It's like I had superpowers. See how fast that second zip tie went on there? Next thing I do is I put on the gasket. And then on the lid. This lid, there's an upside and a downside. There's notches that are for the top and there's a smooth side that goes to the bottom. Make sure the notch side faces up at you. If not, you're going to find a place where like 2 screws probably aren't going to fit in. I don't know who the guy in Discord did that is, but hey, we all make mistakes. Just take it apart, put it back together. Pro tip here is to hand thread every last one of these screws and go around several times just doing finger tight to get that gasket to come down slowly onto the box. Over tightening this is self-defeating and will actually just warp the lid at the edges. You don't want to do that. If you're warping the box, you're over tightening it in weird places. Peel and just whoa, look at that. Doesn't that actually look beautiful? But you know what's more beautiful than that reflection in that beautiful box? The power that it's going to suck from that 84 volt battery and then shove into the next part we're going to eventually get to here down the road. I always start at the battery cable side first. So I like to flip it upside down. And on our original XR rails, you have those 2 little white boxes. Those are where the original void seals are that voided your warranty if you were to take these 2 screws out. These are the first 2 we're going to put back, and this is also when we're going to go ahead and size that cable by shoving it into the controller box just a little bit more to get rid of any leftover slack in it. An extra few minutes spent here will yield great results in keeping your battery cable out of the way of your tire. You don't want the tire to touch that thing, it'll be bad. They do provide screws for your battery box and the controller. I like to put at least the battery box one in first. And I'm just going to keep checking. This is always worth a double, triple check. Make sure you got that wire about as long as you really, really want it. And once you figure that out, you're there. I'm going to put in just a teeny bit more. And now it's time to snug this part down. Once again, I like to get a tool. You don't need to go crazy tight on this. Once it's finger tight, just a little bit more turns, and it's not slipping in and out, you're good. You're good. Don't over tighten these things. The original XRs use battery wild retainer cables for this particular rail design. I highly recommend that you reuse these, as they keep the battery really nicely tucked inside the frame. Also one over here on this side. I like to put that one in as well. This just keeps everything nice and good, nice and safe. Now that those two retainer cables are in, I'm going to put the last screw in to hold now the complete Engineer's box in place. And I'm not really worried about getting any of the screws tight. I like to leave them a little bit loose until I get more screws in. That way it kind of squares the board up a bit. Just make sure you don't have misaligning things that'll cause you a headache down the road. I'm just going to snug that one down a bit. Yeah, it's pretty sloppy. I think maybe a little snugger. It can be ultra sloppy. So this part's done. I'm going to flip this a little bit out of the way, and now we're going to bring in the motor. The mighty Superflux high-speed motor. This thing is the shit. If you're building one, buy this motor and just build your board and be happy. It comes well packaged these days. Get your bolts up on the top. It's snug in there. Totally molded in the styrofoam box. They could drop this out of an airplane, there still wouldn't be a scratch on it. Fenders is packaging these motors so much better than they used to. As a company, I think they have come forward into the future for not only making the best stuff in the world, but making sure the best stuff in the world actually gets to your house unbroken. Okay, some of you guys with keen eyes out there are going to realize, okay, that ain't a Superflux high speed. It's actually a Superflux high torque with an Enduro tire on it. Okay, I'll be honest. The box did come with a Superflux high speed motor in it, but I already stole it. Yeah, I'm guilty as charged. I stole it. So this board's actually going to get the motor that used to be on my board, which was the Superflux high torque. It's a badass motor. I recommend this motor as well. If you're over a 200-pound rider, go with the HT. You'll be happy as hell. Everybody else under 200 pounds all day long for everything. Just get this one, the high speed. This one right there, sitting there with another Thunder tire. They kind of age like milk, unfortunately. They feel great, but they don't have a long lifespan. But when you get your new Superflux motor, be it a high torque or high speed, don't take that tire off. Leave it on there. Use it, enjoy it. It's going to wear out in like 400 or 500 miles, and then you can put on another one anyways. But use the tire. It's a good tire. Okay, so that channel I just pointed out with my fingers is where this red wire is going to go. It's really important you make sure that red wire sits in that channel. Some people have actually managed not to pay attention to that, and I always like to have the fins up. I like to turn the board around to where the controller glass side is up, and I set it down to where that wire is in that little groove inside the block. Sometimes I find it's helpful to raise the board a little bit. I'm just going to use this old fish high, set that under there just to raise it up a little bit higher so it's kind of just sitting on there. And I really like to pay close attention. I like to just double, triple check, make sure that that wire harness is sitting in that channel on the block of the motor. Failure to do this and you're not paying attention, you could easily stab the motor with either the two little things coming off that block, or it'll be the other way and you'll pinch the harness and then you ruin it, you know, just failure to take a few extra seconds to make sure it was sitting there correctly. Once again, with all the bolts, I like to start them by hand, snug them in, and then I'm just going to get these snug. I'm not going to worry about making them tight right now. Just want to get them snug. Getting parts attached here. And once those are kind of seated, just barely finger tight. I'm just gonna finger tighten those, and I'm just gonna have a look. And this is what we're trying to do. So you want the wire to look like this. It needs to be under those two things and not pinched. You don't want those two things going into the harness, or you can say goodbye harness. Once again, I've read on Discord where somebody's done that. So let their mistake be not your mistake, or mine, or anybody else's. That's why we all help each other out. That's why it's a big community where we help each other build stuff. So now that we're on the other side, it's easiest to plug in your motor first before the rail. Once the rail's in place, good luck keeping touching the collar to this thing because it fits in there really snug. So put this in first. Push it in. Screw the collar snug. And as it snugs in, I like to push a little bit more and then just kind of see if it'll screw in a little bit more. And I just keep on doing that till it stops and then it's finally completely snug. This is another item you want watertight. You don't want it coming loose. Who knows when you'll take it apart again, but if you got the Thunder tire, that'll be in about 400 miles. I'm going to go ahead and set the other rail in place. And I just like to try to just start to fit it. And if it's not fitting on there, there's going to be a reason why. Right there it is. That wire for the motor cable is kind of sticking off to the side. And we're going to make sure to tuck that in and make sure it's also in the channel too. It's super important. The same damage you can possibly do on the other side, you can do on this side if you're just not paying attention, you know, but just take your time. Put everything in place, set it in, line it up, make sure it's where it belongs. And then we're going to go ahead and hand thread these screws. Double check that wire harness. I'm happy with it, we're good. Stuff is in place pretty well. So now I'm going to put in the last two void spot screws where the little void boxes are, and this is what's going to start squaring up our board so we can put on the rest of the parts. This is why I kind of leave everything loose. See, I have to adjust here because the board's not square, so we're making it square right now by doing that. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of snug in place a little bit. I'm not worried about the final tightening on these screws yet either. So now we got the most important 8 screws of the board assembled into it. These two, the 4 white squared box ones, and then the 2 on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tightening up the motor screws. I'm going to get those a little snugger. I'll screw these ones in the rest of the way. Now I'm not going to show on this video, unfortunately, because I forgot to film it, but at the very end, the very last step is to actually crank these bolts right here super tight. But do that at the end. Don't do it now, just do it at the end. When all the other crap's on your board, remember just to give those a nice good crank. Those you want to make tight. So for foot pads, you can modify an XR flat foot pad. This is what I like. This is how I roll. I just love the wood foot pads, so I just went and modded my own. But this is a lot of DIY for those that want to do it. Check out my channel. I actually show how I kind of did that in an older video. But since we're trying to keep this easy, plug and play, no soldering, no BS, we got a Stompy. Stompy comes with a nice place to put an air tag. You should put an air tag in every one of your boards. That way if somebody steals it, hopefully you can recover your board. And this is where the connector goes through. And I like to kind of just set it in place. And I'll put like maybe one screw right there in the corner closest to that connector right now. I'm really not worried about attaching or building anything. I just want to get this foot pad plugged in so I can start a little bit of initial testing. Just like the motor controller, it only goes in one way. The pin's kind of aligned. You push it in as far as you can go, and then there's a little collar. You're going to turn clockwise until it clicks and locks. Sometimes you might need a little needle nose pliers to help you get that last little bit on there. Don't squeeze on that hard. It's a plastic part. It's very easy to break, so just be gentle with it. Now that all the electronics on this board are fully assembled, now it's time to make sure stuff's working before we commit to throwing 50 gajillion more screws in this thing and finding out something doesn't work. You know, you want to find out now, not later. So in this case, it's on. Looks like this battery is sitting at about, I would say 30%. I'm going to check the sensitivity of the Stompy pad in all sorts of directions, and it is definitely responding. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to turn it off, and we're going to finish putting the board together. Alright, now that we got it upside down, time to install the mud flaps, or cable protectors, whatever you want to call them. Really sweet. They actually give these to us these days. You don't have to 3D print them anymore. Granted, not everybody owns a 3D printer, so it's awesome they give them to you. Slap them in place. Your little parts kit, you got your like screws. You get 4 of them, you actually get 2 extras. These screws aren't like super duper important, they're just kind of like a placeholder to kind of keep them in place as you put your bumpers on. At the end of the day, I end up not using these 2 screws. I just use the outer screws on these, will hold them in place, kind of like the old school XR little mud flap did, that went across the whole box when it was like more of a square shape instead of this more modern E shape. So on the XR foot pad, there's this little notch here. It won't not let you put that on the new controller. You have to do some modification here, and it's really easy to do. Get you a toenail clipper or a little nipper or something. Just take this little tab off. Just go, boom, gone. Do it to the other side. Boom, gone. Quick and easy. Now it fits on flawlessly. So once that's done, I'm going to make sure these first 4 security void screws, whatever you want to call them, where the void stickers are, let's make those tight, because once the bumper's on, we don't get the opportunity to retighten these again. So now's the time to tighten these to all the way tight. And then we're going to put on our front bumper. Our hand starts all the screws first, so just don't go with that like a power tool like you're seeing here. This is just for the sake of keeping this video not 10 hours long, so nobody's going to watch that, not even me. But we'll snug down the front foot pad. And then we're going to move on to the back foot pad. The back bumper requires like no modifications. And if you wanted to do like, say, like bang bumpers, that would even be a better option. Bang bumpers require 0 modifications for this type of build. And bang bumpers are definitely the best bumpers, but for this build we're using stock XR bumpers, you know, because we're kind of trying to keep this kind of like a sleeper XR, you know. It's like nobody knows this is like a super board. It's a super board hiding in like sheep's clothing. Total sleeper. If you're an American, we refer to that as cars that they come up looking super stock, but they usually have like this monster motor in them, and then things just tear balls and nobody even knew about it. The sleeper, I guess. I don't know. We'll see if I keep this in the video. I don't know. But either way, tighten these 4 bolts down. Everything looking good. Flip it back over. Alright, let's take the foot pad. Cush high foot pad we're going to put on this board. Personally not my favorite, but this is not my board. This is my wife's board, so it gets the Cush high on it. She likes this foot pad, and she got a small foot. But seriously, if you're wearing a size 12 and you're buying a Cush high, I don't know, you must have some weird foot, because my little simple 12-inch foot does not like being on this foot pad. I prefer the old-fashioned Future Motion flat wooden foot pad. That's, to me, has always been the best one. There hasn't been a better, but that's just me. Old dude. These 2 short screws, put those definitely right here up at the front. This is the thinnest part of the pad. It just needs to just screw into the frame. Do not use long screws here, because those could potentially screw into like a battery cable or something. You don't want that. So just use your shorty screws here. The medium length ones in this spot. This spot, medium length. And then the underside one should be the longer ones. Okay, and the same just like with the back foot pad there. We'll just do the same thing up here on the front one. Put kind of the medium length screws in these 2 spots. And now, for the, if you're going to use a stock XR fender, you're going to be left with this funny, goofy gap from the Stompy leaves. I just found a file on their thing that led me to printables for a little shorty front fender, 3D printed that, and then just kind of hacked it to kind of fill in this little spot here. I guess if you don't have access to a 3D printer, they do sell the fender deletes. Buy one of those, you know, maybe cut that thing in half. That'd probably be a solution as well, especially if you're using a rear Stompy too and you wanted to use an XR fender, but I don't know how many people are using XR fenders anymore. Okay, so while I'm tightening on this fender, there's definitely some apps you're going to need to pick up, and the first one's called VESC Tool, VESC Tool. Just put it on my wife's Android phone, and I think now it costs a couple dollars. It used to be free, but I guess if you have Android, I think it's a couple bucks now. Either way, you need the tool. Just download it. Make sure it's VESC Tool 6.05. That's what we're all using. It's the newest version that we're using. Download it. And while you're at it, go ahead and download Float Control and Floaty. Those are good companion apps that you can get right now. And you'll get into those later. The first one you need is the VESC Tool. That's the most important. The other 2 should be free. And then there's a third thing that dropped today I just heard about, which is Float Hub. And this is, you know, the Float Life people doing it. Nico dropped a 4-minute video on there. If you're into that, you should go check that out. That'd be really handy for first-time vest builders, quite possibly. Really can't speak to it as it's just dropped hot today at the making of this video. And now I'd like to give the board a nice little look through. All the stuff turning on. It's all looking good. but it's not ready to ride. It's not ready for prime time. We still have to go through the setup process. That's very important. It's not impossible. It's not hard. If you fuck it up, you can fix it. But you're going to go to the Fungineers, to their guides, controller box step-by-step guide. Absolutely watch the first video for a second build opinion, depending on your project. You're going to see some neat things there. The next one's a good idea. This delays everything. And then the middle ones, you're probably going to be on 6.05 firmware, so you're probably not going to have to deal with that middle stuff. And then the video at the very end, this is the setup video. Watch his video. He does an excellent job walking you through setup. And then a couple little notes. So just follow that whole guide. You'll be good to go. And you're going to need to charge this thing, and you can't use your FM charger. It has to be an 84 volt charger if you're using an 84 volt battery. If you do a 75 volt build, obviously you need a 75 volt charger. So chargers are not interchangeable. Do know. So when you're buying your battery from the Fungineers, buy the charger from the Fungineers as well. Even completely different connectors here. Not the same. And after you follow all that, start putting your board through the paces. I highly recommend you start up Float Control app as one of your first apps after your board's kind of set up to Best Tool, because that one will literally catch any goof ups you've done. It'll give you some warnings right away if you've got a bad setup, and it tells you how to fix them. So super valuable tool to make sure that your board is set up correctly and you don't have any bad settings. It just helps you fix a few mistakes you might have made or might not have been gotten caught. But other than that, it's never been easier to build a Vest board. I mean, this thing just rides like money. It has so much power, so much braking. It feels super stable, super safe. This is going to be my wife's board. I want to make sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted before I hand it over to her, and then she's putting her butt on the line driving this thing. But it's not hard to do these days. It's easy. And the resources just keep growing geometrically. Every 90 days there's something new, something more amazing, something bigger, badder, greater. I mean, these are the days. This was a great project. It only cost $1,800 to upgrade this whole board. Yeah, maybe a little closer to $19 if you include the charger. I already had my own charger for my first build, but yeah, $1,800 is cheap. And this thing's got the power to keep up with the GTS, if not beat it. Same with the ADV 2 Pro even. I mean, this board's a top contender. It's a top 3 board of the best boards you can own right now. Fungineers Superflex full setup, and then you have your ADV2 setup, and you got the Onewheel GTS recurve rally. So there's just, those are your choices. Some are more spendy than others, but this one will hang with all 3 of those groups, no problem. And it only costed me $1,800. I even got the fangs still left on there, just to give it that old sleeper, old school XR vibe. I want to thank you guys for watching.